I have seen a lot in my 42 years on the bench. I have watched people lie to my face, cry crocodile tears, and try every trick in the book to bury the truth under paperwork, procedure, and sheer intimidation. I have seen wealth used as a weapon. I have seen lawyers used as an army. I have seen powerful people walk into my courtroom with the sole intention of making someone smaller than them disappear. But I have never in all my decades wearing this robe had a man fill my courtroom with 8 attorneys from 3 different firms and line them up like a firing squad against a single father who could not afford one. Until the morning of May 13th, 2024, at exactly 9:17 a.m., when a man named Garrett Emerson Blake, CEO of Meridian Atlantic Holdings, a Fortune 500 company with annual revenues of $14.2 billion, tried to use the weight of his legal empire to crush a man whose only crime was building a treehouse for his daughter. You think you have heard courtroom stories? Trust me, you have never heard one where the balance was this lopsided and the ending was this perfect. Hit that subscribe button right now because what I am about to tell you is going to make you want to reach through the screen, and then it is going to remind you why the law exists in the first place. Let me take you back to how this whole thing started. The case file on my desk looked like it belonged in federal court. Case number 2024 CV 5587. Property dispute, harassment, trespassing, and frivolous endangerment. That last one was a charge I had to look up because Blake's legal team had essentially invented it. The defendant in Blake's countersuit was a man named Marco Antonio Reyes, age 36. A widowed father and full-time custodial janitor at Rhode Island Hospital, who made $15.75 an hour. The complainant in the original filing was Marco himself, alleging harassment, intimidation, and destruction of personal property by his neighbor, Garrett Emerson Blake. Now, Marco Reyes. I need you to know this man first because the story does not work unless you understand what he was carrying on his shoulders when Garrett Blake decided to try to break him. Marco came to Providence from Guatemala when he was 19 years old. He worked construction for 6 years, saved every dollar he could, got his green card, and married a woman named Isabel who worked as a seamstress at a dry cleaner on Broad Street. They bought a tiny house on Summit Avenue, 900 square feet, 2 bedrooms, a small backyard, with a mortgage they could barely afford at $1,150 a month. It was the proudest day of Marco's life. He told me he stood on the front step the day they got the keys and cried because his father back in Guatemala had told him that a man who owns his home owns his future. Isabel was diagnosed with ovarian cancer when their daughter Luna was 3 years old. Isabel fought for 14 months. She died holding Marco's hand in a hospital room at Rhode Island Hospital, the same hospital where Marco now mopped floors on the overnight shift. Luna was 4 when she lost her mother. She is 7 now. Marco worked the overnight custodial shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week. He came home, made Luna breakfast, walked her to school, slept until 2:30, picked her up, helped with homework, cooked dinner, read her a story, put her to bed, and left for work at 10:30, every single day. He had $780 in savings. He drove a 2008 Honda Accord with a taped side mirror. He had no family in the United States except Luna. He never missed a day of work. He never complained. Not once. If you have ever been a parent doing everything alone, if you have ever tucked your child into bed and then gone to work in the dark because that is what it takes, please subscribe to this channel. We are a family here fighting for justice and compassion. Join us now. When Marco walked into my courtroom, he was wearing a white dress shirt that was clean and pressed, but slightly too large for him. It might have been borrowed. His tie was dark blue, knotted carefully but not expertly. His shoes were clean but worn. He carried a manila folder with his documents because he could not afford a briefcase. He sat in the gallery with his hands on that folder, back straight, jaw set. He did not have a lawyer. He could not afford one. Legal aid had a 6-week wait list. Marco was representing himself, and across the aisle, filling the entire defense table and spilling into the first row of the gallery, were 8 attorneys. 8. 3 from a corporate litigation firm in Boston, 2 from a real estate law firm in Providence, 2 from a firm specializing in property disputes, and 1 personal counsel who traveled with Blake everywhere. They had matching leather portfolios. They had laptops open. They had stacks of binders. The defense table looked like a law library had exploded. But here is where it gets interesting. Are you still watching? Garrett Emerson Blake had purchased the property next to Marco's house on Summit Avenue 14 months earlier. Not to live in. Blake lived in a $4.8 million estate in Barrington. He bought the Summit Avenue property as an investment, planning to demolish the existing structure and build luxury condominiums. Marco's tiny house was the only thing standing between Blake's lot and the corner parcel he needed for the project. Blake had offered to buy Marco's house 3 times. The first offer was $95,000, roughly $40,000 below market value. The second offer was $100,000. The third was $110,000 with a 30-day vacate clause. Marco said no each time, not because he was stubborn, because that house was where Luna had taken her first steps. It was where Isabel had planted a rose bush in the backyard that still bloomed every spring. It was where Luna's bedroom had stars on the ceiling that Isabel had painted the month before she got sick. Marco was not selling, and that is when things turned ugly. On the weekend of February 10th, 2024, Marco built Luna a treehouse in their backyard. Nothing fancy. Plywood, 2x4s, a rope ladder, and a small platform about 6 feet off the ground in an old oak tree. He spent $340 on materials, money he had saved for 3 months. Luna helped him paint it purple because purple was Isabel's favorite color. Luna called it the castle. She kept a blanket up there and a picture of her mother in a plastic frame. 3 days later, Marco received a certified letter from Blake's legal team alleging that the treehouse violated a property setback ordinance and constituted an attractive nuisance that endangered the community. The letter demanded the treehouse be removed within 72 hours, or Blake would pursue legal action, including damages of $250,000 and forced sale of Marco's property. A $250,000 lawsuit over a child's treehouse. Marco went to the city zoning office. The treehouse was within code. It was 4 feet from the property line. The minimum setback was 3 feet. The treehouse was legal. Marco sent a handwritten letter to Blake's attorneys stating this. He was polite. He cited the ordinance number. Blake's team responded with a second letter, this time alleging that the oak tree's root system was encroaching on Blake's property and demanding $75,000 in damages. They also filed a complaint with the city, claiming Marco's house had code violations: peeling paint, a cracked front step, a fence that was 2 inches too tall. An inspector came. The violations were cosmetic and minor. Marco fixed them within a week, borrowing paint from his neighbor. And then, on the morning of March 1st, 2024, Marco came home from his overnight shift at 7:15 a.m. to find the treehouse destroyed. Someone had taken a chainsaw to the oak tree branch that supported it. The platform was on the ground. The plywood was splintered. Luna's blanket was in the mud. The picture of Isabel in the plastic frame was cracked. Luna saw it from her bedroom window. She screamed. Marco told me that sound is the worst thing he has ever heard in his life, worse than the machines in Isabel's hospital room. A security camera from the neighbor across the street, Mrs. Patricia Huang, captured a pickup truck pulling into Blake's adjacent lot at 5:40 a.m. 2 men with chainsaws. They were on Marco's property for 11 minutes. The truck was registered to a landscaping company that Blake's holding company had on retainer. Let me say that again. A Fortune 500 CEO sent men with chainsaws onto a widowed father's property at 5:40 in the morning to destroy a treehouse that a 7-year-old girl had painted purple because it was her dead mother's favorite color. Because the father would not sell his house. Drop a comment right now and tell me what you are feeling. And if you believe that no amount of money gives a man the right to destroy a child's world, hit that like button. What happened next changes everything. Marco filed a police report. Officer Sandra Feliciano, badge number 4071, documented the damage, collected the security footage, and noted that the tree branch had been cut from Marco's side of the property line, meaning Blake's workers had committed criminal trespass and destruction of property. Marco also filed a civil complaint for harassment and property destruction. Blake's team countersued, filing the case that landed on my docket, claiming Marco's treehouse had been an illegal structure and that Marco had created a hostile environment by refusing to sell. They buried the countersuit in 147 pages of legal motions. 147 pages, against a janitor with a manila folder. Before I go any further, if you believe that justice should not depend on how many lawyers you can afford, your support matters. Subscribe now. May 13th, court day. Garrett Emerson Blake arrived at 9:10 a.m. in a custom-tailored kitten suit, the kind handmade in Naples that cost between $7,000 and $10,000. His shoes were John Lobb, handcrafted, easily $2,500. His watch was an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore in rose gold, worth approximately $55,000. His cufflinks were Cartier, gold, monogrammed. He walked in with his 8 attorneys arranged behind him like a chess formation. They filled the defense table in the first row. Blake sat in the center, checking his phone, not looking at Marco, not looking at anyone. Marco sat alone on the other side, white shirt, blue tie, manila folder. If you are still with me, you are about to see something that will restore your faith. Like this video right now if you believe in fairness. Blake's lead attorney, a man named Worthington from the Boston firm, stood and delivered a presentation that lasted 14 minutes. He cited zoning regulations, property law precedents, attractive nuisance doctrine, eminent domain adjacent theory, and something called constructive interference with development rights that I am fairly certain he invented for this case. He referenced 23 exhibits. He used a projector. He used a laser pointer. He concluded by requesting that I dismiss Marco's complaint, uphold Blake's countersuit, and order Marco to pay $250,000 in damages or forfeit his property. When he finished, I looked at Marco. "Mr. Reyes, you are representing yourself. Would you like to respond?" Marco stood up. He held his manila folder. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was steady. "Your Honor, I am not a lawyer. I am a janitor. I clean floors at the hospital. I built my daughter a treehouse because she asked me for one, and because I wanted her to have something that made her happy. The treehouse was legal, I checked. I have the zoning paper here." He held it up. "Mr. Blake wants my house so he can build condominiums. I told him no because my wife planted a rose bush in the backyard, and my daughter has stars on her ceiling that her mother painted. That is my home. He sent men to destroy my daughter's treehouse at 5 in the morning. My daughter saw it from her window. She cried for 3 days. He paused. His voice cracked for 1 second. He composed himself. "I do not have 8 lawyers. I have this folder. But I have the truth. And I hope that is enough." The courtroom was dead silent. I could hear the clock. I could hear someone in the back row crying quietly. "Tell me what you would do sitting in my chair right now." Now here is where this story takes a turn. I looked at Garrett Blake. "Mr. Blake, would you like to address the court personally?" He waved vaguely at Worthington like the attorney should handle it. I asked again. Blake sighed. He stood. "Judge, I'm a businessman. This is a business matter. The property next to mine is obstructing a $22 million development project. I have made fair offers. He refused. The treehouse was an eyesore. This is not personal. This is commerce." I asked him directly, "Mr. Blake, did you authorize the landscaping crew that entered Mr. Reyes's property on March 1st? My team manages those relationships. I don't micromanage. Your team destroyed a child's treehouse on someone else's property. Are you aware of that?" He shrugged. He shrugged in my courtroom the same way people shrug when a waiter brings the wrong appetizer. "It was a pile of plywood and a tree, Judge. Let's not be dramatic." I felt my jaw tighten. My father's voice was in my head. My father, who came from Italy with nothing, who built a grocery store on Federal Hill with his hands. He used to tell me, "The courtroom is the last place where everyone is truly equal." I looked at Marco on one side with his manila folder. I looked at Blake on the other with his 8 attorneys, his Keaton suit, his $55,000 watch, and his shrug. And I delivered one sentence that I had been building toward since the moment I opened this case file. "Mr. Blake, In this courtroom, a manila folder and the truth outweigh 8 attorneys and a lie, every single time. If you have stuck with me this long, you are amazing. Subscribe if you have not already. What comes next is the moment everyone waited for. Mr. Blake, I am dismissing your countersuit in its entirety. Every motion, every claim, every one of your 147 pages. Dismissed. The treehouse was legal. The zoning confirms it. Your claims are frivolous and your filings are designed not to seek justice, but to exhaust a man who cannot afford to fight back. That is not litigation. That is bullying with a briefcase. On Mr. Reyes's complaint, I find in his favor on all counts. I am fining you $50,000 for destruction of property, trespassing, and harassment. Every penny goes to Marco Reyes for property repairs, replacement of the treehouse, and a trust for his daughter Luna's education. You will perform 500 hours of community service. You will serve them at Habitat for Humanity, building homes for families who cannot afford them. You will frame walls. You will carry lumber. You will swing a hammer. You will do it in work clothes, not Keaton suits, and you will learn what it means to build something for someone instead of taking something from them. You are prohibited from contacting Marco Reyes or approaching his property. Any further frivolous filings against Mr. Reyes will result in sanctions, and I am referring the criminal trespass and destruction of property to the State Attorney General for prosecution. I paused. You brought 8 lawyers into my courtroom to intimidate a man with a manila folder. You destroyed a treehouse that a 7-year-old girl painted purple because it was her mother's favorite color. You called it a pile of plywood. Mr. Blake, that pile of plywood was built by a father who works the overnight shift cleaning hospital floors so his daughter can have a roof over her head. That treehouse was the only place Luna Reyes could sit and feel close to her mother. And you sent men with chainsaws to take it from her so you could build luxury condominiums. In my courtroom, a child's castle outranks a billionaire's portfolio. Every time. The courtroom erupted. I have heard applause in my courtroom before, but this was different. This was people standing, people weeping, people who had come in for other cases and stayed because they could not leave. Marco was sitting with his manila folder pressed against his chest and tears streaming down his face. He did not make a sound. He just held that folder like it was a shield that had finally done its job. Blake's attorneys were packing up. Blake himself was standing, buttoning his jacket, trying to look composed, but his hands were unsteady. Worthington leaned in and whispered something. Blake shook his head. He walked out without looking at anyone. 8 lawyers followed him in silence. Smash that like button if you believe justice was served today. Garrett Blake was charged with criminal trespass and destruction of property. He pleaded no contest and was fined an additional $25,000. His development project on Summit Avenue was denied by the City Planning Board after the case generated public attention. 3 of his attorneys filed to withdraw from his representation within a month. Novosphere's board issued no statement, but Blake quietly stepped back from public appearances for the rest of the year. Marco Reyes rebuilt the treehouse. This time, the whole neighborhood helped. Mrs. Huang brought lemonade. Officer Feliciano brought her kids. They built it bigger and stronger, with a better platform and a proper railing. Luna painted it purple again. She put Isabel's picture back up in a new frame, a real one this time, not plastic, bought by the retired couple 2 doors down. The community raised $112,000 through a fund for Luna's education and Marco's mortgage. Marco told me he paid 2 months ahead on the mortgage for the first time in his life. Luna started 2nd grade. Her teacher told Marco that Luna drew a picture of the castle for art class and wrote underneath it, "My daddy built this. My mommy watches from the stars." Marco keeps that drawing on his refrigerator next to a photo of Isabel. I think about that case more than most. I think about Marco standing in my courtroom with a manila folder and shaking hands, facing 8 lawyers and 147 pages designed to erase him. I think about how close he came to losing everything, not because he did anything wrong, but because a man with $14.2 billion in annual revenue decided that Marco's home was in his way. I think about how the system almost failed Marco, and how it took a security camera, a brave neighbor, and a courtroom that still believes in fairness to pull it back from the edge. My father used to tell me the courtroom is the last place where everyone is truly equal. He said it because he believed it, and he believed it because he had to. He was an immigrant who worked in a factory and drove a taxi. He knew what it felt like to be the smallest person in the room. He knew that the only place a man like him could stand next to a man like Garrett Blake and be treated the same was in front of a judge. I carry that with me every day. It is why I do this. To anyone watching who has money, power, influence, lawyers on speed dial, remember that the man with the manila folder has the same right to stand in my courtroom as you do. Your resources do not make your case stronger. The truth makes your case stronger. And if the truth is not on your side, no number of attorneys will save you. To anyone out there who feels outmatched, who is facing something bigger than you with nothing but a folder and the truth, remember Marco Reyes. He could not afford a lawyer. He could barely afford paint for his daughter's treehouse. But he walked into a courtroom, told the truth, and the truth was enough. It is always enough. You are enough. Thank you for watching this story all the way to the end. If you believe in real justice, I am asking you to do 3 things for me. Subscribe to this channel so stories like Marco's reach every person who needs to hear them. Leave a comment and tell me about your father, your mother, someone who built something with their hands for someone they loved. And watch the next video. It is about a senator who tried to have a homeless veteran arrested for saluting the American flag. And what happened in my courtroom brought the entire nation to its feet. I promise you, it will be worth every minute. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing that people like Marco and Luna matter. In my courtroom, justice is not just a word, it is a promise. And I keep my promises.